Hey, it's Kevin. So what we're going to do is create a FHIR app today that uses GPT-3 and generates recipes for patients based on their medical history and allergies. So that sounds like a whole lot of stuff. So actually, what are we going to be building? So what we're essentially going to do is let a patient log in to a patient portal-like app that essentially auto-populates this little web app, right? So we're going to have allergies, conditions, and these are going to come from the patient's medical record. Those are going to get put into this little free text area, which says, give me a recipe for sushi for someone with the following allergies, and that's the box up above, and who has the following medical conditions, and those are the conditions above. Going to be a little send button, which is then going to send something to quote unquote AI. All right. So send to AI is just to keep me honest, to be like, hey, this box up here that's free text, that's actually what got sent. And then we're going to have the AI response, which in this instance is a sushi recipe. Cool. So at the onset, obviously a huge disclaimer, which is like, this is health information and you probably need some better security around it, like HIPAA, BAAs, all that kind of good stuff. So this is just meant to show possibilities. I was reading something today and it said, hey, paths are made by walking on them. And I thought that was a good comparison to what we're doing here, which is, GPT-3, it's popular, everyone's talking about them. Let's start making some paths. But in order to make a path, you gotta start walking. So that's, we're starting to walk here. Also, by the time you listen to this, I'm recording in January 2023. Microsoft just announced that it'll have some HIPAA covered APIs to OpenAI's language models in Azure. And you can click on this link to get more info about that. But that may be insanely old news by the time you listen to this video. All right. So you're probably asking yourself, how do you actually do any of this, right? So to create this app, what you're going to need to do is host the app somewhere, and we're going to use REPL. You're going to have to register to FHIR app, and we're going to do that with Cerner. And then you have to have some way to connect to OpenAI. Or the language APIs. And what I use in this case is Lambda on AWS. Then what we're going to do is log in as a patient and then render. All right, so step one, create and host an app. So you can actually just fork mine at this address here. Basically, there's a little, you sign up, you can get this little fork, and what it'll do is bring you to something that looks like this. So this is just some JavaScript that has a few HTML files. So there's an index.html, which basically says, give me recipes, I'm hungry. Then there's a launch, which basically says, hey, I'm trying to authorize this app against EHR. And then an app.html, which is what's going to do all that stuff I showed you up here, which is this little web app right here. The reason I use REPL a lot is it spins up a little server for you. So you have all this HTML and JavaScript, and you also have your own URL. So you can edit this, and then it'll be reflected at this URL. To register an app, you got to have some kind of URL, and REPL makes this really easy to have a URL for your code. So that's why I use it. So once you fork it, then there's not much else to do there right now, and you just got to go register the app. So to register an app in Cerner, and you could do this in any big EHR like Epic or whatnot, but I happen to use Cerner in this case, you go to codeconsole.cerner.com, and then you create an app. There's a little button at the top right. And the first page you get, as of this recording, is this application information. So basically, you need to give it a name. I called my GPT3 FHIR. Then you have to give it an application type. And applications can be either provider facing. So this is like an app that is for doctors or nurses, patient facing, which is an app that allows a patient to log in as themselves and get their own information, or system level. So this is kind of like a super user account where it's like there's some big integration between like some machine and pathology and the EHR, and that pathology machine wants to be able to get labs or ICD-10s. So then it would use a super user account or a system level account. I believe you also need system level access to use bulk FHIR, which we're not using bulk FHIR today, we're just using patient. Then you gotta pick a type of access, so it's either online or offline. Online is that the patient's gonna be a little web app that's open and it'll get a token for like 10 minutes. You can get a refresh token, but after 10 minutes, kind of whatever authorization you get is gonna go away. So that's online. Offline is like the application can be refreshed for like 6 months or so. It has this token that's like very long lived and not just 10 minutes is the way I think about it. And then you got to pick a application privacy. So you can have public apps or confidential apps. Public apps are like when you can't keep a secret. So like, you know, stuff on REPL or front-end JavaScript HTML, you can't really keep a secret out there, right? But if you're creating an iOS app, maybe you can. So that would be a confidential app for iOS, but public app for like HTML and JavaScript. So you would pick public in this case because we're making an app that a patient's going to use in a web browser to use AI on their medical record. Then the last thing on this page you got to fill out is a redirect URI, and that is essentially that REPL right here. You just take that. And the way I set it up is you just paste that in /app.html and then it'll work. What that essentially, the redirect URI is essentially that you're going to launch this app that's going to go to the authorization server. Patient's going to log in, never give you the app developer their username password. They're just going to log into the authorization server for that EHR, and then they're going to authorize this app. Once that authorization's done, the server's going to shuttle them over to this app.html page, which you control. If you're making an actual app, kind of similar to the disclaimer above, you probably want to have like terms of service and privacy policy and all that good stuff. Then you click next, and then you get product selection, which is 2 out of 4 steps. So product selection, for Cerner, I would just click Millennium. They have something else called Saurian. Another type of EHR, but I would just click Millennium in this instance. You can also do bulk FHIR stuff here, but since it's a patient app, you're not going to be able to do bulk FHIR. Select products. So you can choose between FHIR R4 and FHIR DSTU2. Basically, DSTU2 was like the first version of FHIR that was out in the wild that people were actually using. That's going away at some point. R4 is backwards compatible. It'll work for a long time. I would use R4 because that's what you should probably be using in 2023. Click next. Then you have this little API access screen. And what essentially it has is user product or patient product. So the way I think about these is like user product lets you query across multiple patients at once. Like if you're creating an app for like doctors or nurses to like look up a group of patients or like find one in a directory or something where you have to like look across multiple patients, you would use these user product APIs. Patient product APIs are more that there's just one patient who's in context. So like I am a patient, I'm logging in as myself, I only have access to my own stuff. In the case of a provider app, it's like I'm a doctor, I'm in the EHR, I open up this app, and it just lets me access that patient's stuff. That would be patient product APIs. So the way I think about it is like user over a bunch of patients, patient just scope to that one patient. And you're probably like, why would they even bother putting this here on a patient-facing app? Because it would be crazy if as a patient, I could query other patients like medical records. And you can't actually, you can only, like I'm pretty sure if you selected user product API, it would just lock you down to your own stuff for a patient app. Which is to say, just click go to patient product APIs, go to allergy intolerance, click read. That'll let you read patients' allergies. Click condition read. That'll let you read their ICD-10, SNOMED, etc. And then if you needed demographics, click patient read. So essentially, what we did is we gave our app a name. We say we're making a patient-facing app that's just going to have a token for like 10 minutes, and it's going to not be able to keep a secret. When we are done with the authorization, we're going to want to be plopped back at our REPL. We're going to be doing it in Millennium for FHIR R4, and we're just going to be reading allergies, conditions, and some demographics. So the last part of this is you get the last screen and you can kind of review your stuff and then agree to the terms of use and click submit. I think if you don't agree to the terms of use, you can't do anything. So at the end of the day, you end up having a client ID that's generated, which is important for you because you need to take this client ID and go back to your REPL and put it in your launch.html. So we will go here and to launch.html. And essentially what this does is it says, hey, I'm going to try to authorize this app, which is identified by this client ID, with these scopes, which is what we checked. It's patient read, condition read, allergy intolerance. And when you're all done, I want you to go and plop me back at my REPL. So you need to take your client ID, put it here. And you also need to, if you forked my REPL, take this and use your own that's up here. So copy this and put it down there /app.html. If this redirect URI doesn't match the one that's registered, it'll give you an error. So but that is that. So what we got is a registered app and somewhere that's serving some code. The last piece you need is some AI on top of it. So you can get an API key for OpenAI, who puts out GPT-3. At this URL, one of the conditions of OpenAI is that you can't put your API key in front-end code. So what I did is I put it in a Lambda with a functions URL. So basically, AWS has these Lambda functions which allow you to just execute JavaScript and Node arbitrarily and give you some response. What I do is kind of proxy through using Lambda to use my API key for OpenAI. If you're interested in the code, you can go to a little subdirectory here. And I have like a little security around it that I already changed out. By the time that this recording is posted, it says, hey, I'm going to have some body come in and I'm going to be parsing out some JSON. I'm going to call it incoming. So if there's this key, which is some minimal security I put around it, which is actually just GUID. So if it's not that GUID, I want you to give a 500 and say it failed. And then essentially all I'm going to do is do a fetch, or like kind of like an AJAX, an old school AJAX, to this URL, which is OpenAI's API. It's going to be a post, and it's going to have my auth token, my API token for OpenAI. You put your own there, and the body's going to be this thing. And if you look at their documentation, essentially you tell it a model to use, which is Text DaVinci 003, which is GPT-3. Prompt is going to be what came in the prompt that we're passing from the front end, and then some other options which will let you kind of like fool around with some of the parts of the model. But all essentially you do is do a fetch, which is a post, give it this object, and then return it as a response, just JSON stringify it. And that is that. Let's see here. So then, the only thing that's left to do after you register your app, you have a place to serve the code, and you have some kind of proxy to OpenAI, is to use it. So one of the things in REPL is it has this little pop-out button. So it says open in a new tab. And what essentially it is that index.html is where we're at. And it says, give me recipes, I'm hungry. And essentially what we're going to do is say, hey, go to launch.html. And this ISS is going to be this FHIR myrecord cerner.com and this GUID. Now, this GUID refers to their open public sandbox that you can use fake patient data in. Each health system will have like kind of its own GUID. So on Cerner's GitHub, they have like a list of all the GUIDs and all the URLs to use. But suffice to say, what you would do is open in a new tab, click Give Me Recipes, I'm hungry. Then you're going to get shuttled over to the authorization server for this non-production domain. And you can type in Frederick Smart and Cerner01. And you're like, oh my gosh, he recorded a video that has a username password in it. And he put it in his Notion. But actually, if you go to the Google group that Cerner has, the Oracle Cerner FHIR developers, and you go to public sandbox test data, you'll get a link to a Google Doc that has the username and password for different patients. They have a bunch of different patients over here, and you can use their username password. So I'm not telling you something that's like confidential. So what you would do is do Frederick Smart, Cerner01, click sign in. And the first thing you're going to be greeted with is this little warning from Cerner that says, hey, this is an unknown app. It's requesting your medical data. Because you got to imagine, like, I'm making this app as me, but I'm telling my neighbor next door, hey, neighbor, I want you to use this great app I made that lets you use AI on your medical records. And they're like, okay, I'll just log in with my patient portal username password. And Cerner is pointing out to him here, hey, do you know who made this? Because God knows what they're going to do with your data. They might just give it to AI, you know. But so anyway, for you to get the app to work, you got to go proceed anyway. And then it has this little authorization screen. So it says, hey, this app is trying to access your health information in the sandbox or whatever health system. It's trying to do it for yourself. And apparently this Frederick Smart's nickname is Big Wolf. Who would have known? But anyway, this application is going to view demographics, allergies, and conditions, which is what we registered it for, right? So that's no surprise. And you're going to get an access token for 10 minutes. Do you want to allow access or go back? And just hit allow access. And what it's going to do is shuttle us over to the app.html. And hopefully it got conditions and it got allergies. So if I reload it here, we'll see what's going on. So it goes over to condition resource, which is here. And it's taken it a long time because these fake patients have a lot of different conditions entered on them. Like any developer can kind of create a condition. So this patient, as of 2023, has 1,117 conditions associated with them. So you go to resource and you can view all the stuff here. This one happens to be done in error. But essentially what I do in my front end code is take the last 5 conditions and just kind of concatenate them here. So this person has acne, strep throat, contusion of the brainstem with loss of consciousness, which will probably affect your recipe. Initial encounter, not subsequent. Other chronic viral hepatitis and other chronic viral hepatitis, right? So essentially, we got an access token for Frederick Smart. We went out to condition. We got some of his conditions back and put them here. And then allergies, we just queried allergy intolerance. This person happens to have 17. I believe these are the last 5, which is they're allergic to pollen, to potassium canronate, to polyps, which is an interesting one, spironolactone, an allergy to 4 quinolones is what I'm guessing there. So again, these are fake and generated by just like kind of random people in the sandbox. So take it with a grain of salt. But what we've done is gotten allergies and conditions for Frederick Smart as himself. So down here in free text, all it does is say, give me a recipe for a sandwich for someone with the following allergies, which the way I set up the REPL is it's this, and has the following medical conditions, which are this. And I have a little button you can click, and it's going to go to our Lambda. I put this little send to AI to kind of keep me honest and be like, oh, this is what got sent. And it's processing here. So one thing to know about Lambda is like it times out after 3 seconds, so you need to like back out that because the OpenAI stuff typically takes more than 3 seconds to finish. But we got a response back for a vegetable sandwich. We can see, I think they were allergic to kiwi? No, pollen. Let's see, I don't know. Hopefully they don't put any fluoroquinolones in their vegetable sandwich. But anyway, ingredients and instructions. So it does not seem to have included any pollen. So these are sandbox patients. So, sometimes it gives you like kind of weird stuff. So in order to try it out better, what you could do is, the way I set this up is you could just copy some of these tryout things, like give me a recipe for peanut butter for someone who's allergic to nuts. And if we go over here, let's see, you can go in free text is just paste that in, send it to AI. Let's see what AI says. Are you gonna give me more nuts? Sunflower seed butter, maple syrup, coconut oil. Although, I don't know the cross-reactivity between, I don't think coconuts are really nuts, but maybe there's some cross-reactivity between peanuts and coconuts. I actually don't know. So I don't know if this is, appropriate or not. The interesting thing is, the more times I do this, the more it gives you different recipes, and sometimes it gives you coconut oil and not coconut oil containing recipes. But what we could do, so I would say maybe that's okay, but I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to go on UpToDate to look. But we could also try out these other ones, is make a recipe for jam for someone who's allergic to blueberries. Let's see if they'll give me blueberry jam. So go here, paste that in, we're sending it off, it's thinking about it, or it's running its statistics on it, probably not thinking in any reasonable way. Strawberry rhubarb jam, any blueberries? Nope. So let's see, make a recipe for jam for someone who oops, wrong way. Who, let's see, likes blueberries. Let's just change it up and see if we get blueberries in our jam. Blueberry jam. Interesting. That's pretty cool. You can try out the rest of these. I also was fooling around with medications, because there's some food medication interactions. So you could try those out. And you could theoretically get medications from medication statement in FHIR as well. So hope you found this helpful in hooking up AI to FHIR. Let me know how you do. You can always reach out to me at kevin@patient.dev. Bye.